The whiskey burned less than the shame, and Penelope Parker had learned to prefer the former over the latter every single night for the past 3 years. She stood at the bar of the Silver Spur Saloon in Owyhee, Nevada, her fingers wrapped around a glass that had been refilled more times than she cared to count, watching the amber liquid catch the lamplight like fool's gold. It was March of 1878, and the mining town bustled with men who had come seeking fortune in silver and copper, men who saw her as just another fixture in this dusty establishment, the pretty girl with sad eyes who drank too much and laughed too loud when the piano player struck up a tune. The problem was that Penelope could not remember the last time she had felt anything without the buffer of alcohol, smoothing the sharp edges of reality. Her mother had died when she was 15. Her father had gambled away their small ranch outside of town when she was 17. And by 18, she had found herself working in this saloon, serving drinks and dodging wandering hands while trying to drown the grief that sat like a stone in her chest. Now at 21, she had perfected the art of staying just drunk enough to smile, just drunk enough to forget, just drunk enough to not care when men leaned too close or whispered propositions she pretended not to hear. She had been kissed plenty of times, fumbling encounters in darkened corners when she had been too intoxicated to push away or too numb to care. But she could never quite recall the details the next morning, just the lingering taste of whiskey and regret. They were not real kisses, not the kind her mother had told her about before she died, the kind that made your heart race and your knees weak, the kind that meant something beyond a moment's distraction from the emptiness inside. The saloon doors swung open with a creak that cut through the noise of card games and raucous laughter, and Penelope glanced up out of habit, cataloging the newcomer with the practiced eye of someone who had learned to assess danger quickly. The man who walked in was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his dusty coat and eyes the color of storm clouds. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, and there was something about the way he carried himself that made her take notice despite the fog in her head. Samuel Morrison had been on the trail for 6 days, driving a small herd of cattle from his ranch in northern Nevada to the buyer in Owyhee, and every muscle in his body ached with exhaustion. He had left his 2 hired hands to set up camp outside of town, while he came in to arrange the final details of the sale and maybe find a hot meal and a bath. The saloon seemed as good a place as any to start, and he pushed through the doors into the smoky interior, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. He noticed her immediately, because it was impossible not to, standing at the bar with golden hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and a face that would have been beautiful if not for the hollow look in her green eyes. She wore a dark blue dress that had seen better days, and she held her glass with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. Something about her tugged at him, a recognition of pain that he understood too well, and before he could think better of it, he found himself walking toward the bar. Penelope watched him approach and felt a flicker of something that might have been interest if she had been sober enough to name it. He had a strong jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble, and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily, though it was set in serious lines now. When he reached the bar, he did not crowd her space the way most men did, instead leaving a respectful distance between them as he signaled the bartender. "Whiskey," Samuel said, his voice low and rough from trail dust. "And whatever the lady is drinking." Penelope raised an eyebrow, her words slightly slurred. "I can buy my own drinks, Cowboy." "Never said you could not," Samuel replied, accepting his glass from the bartender. "Just thought you might appreciate the company." "And what makes you think I want company?" She took another sip, feeling the familiar warmth spread through her chest. Samuel turned to look at her properly, and his gray eyes were surprisingly kind. Because people who drink alone usually do not want to be alone. They just have not found the right person to talk to yet. The observation struck too close to home, and Penelope felt her defenses rise. You some kind of philosopher or just another drifter with opinions? Ranch owner, actually. Samuel Morrison. Friends call me Sam. He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His grip was warm and calloused, the hand of someone who worked hard for a living. Penelope Parker. Nobody calls me anything but trouble. Sam smiled then, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger than she had first thought. He could not have been more than 25 or 26, she guessed. Well, Miss Parker, I have dealt with plenty of trouble in my time. Comes with the territory when you raise cattle. Despite herself, Penelope felt her lips quirk upward. There was something disarming about this man, something genuine that she was not accustomed to encountering in the saloon. Most men who approached her had clear intentions, but Sam seemed content just to stand there and talk, nursing his whiskey and asking her questions about the town. They talked for nearly an hour, and Penelope found herself relaxing in a way she had not in years. Sam told her about his ranch, about the harsh winter they had endured and the new foals that had been born in the spring. He spoke about the land with genuine affection, about the way the sun rose over the mountains and turned everything gold, about the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. And somehow, without quite meaning to, Penelope found herself telling him about her mother, about the ranch her father had lost, about the dreams she had given up when reality had proven too harsh to face sober. The bartender kept refilling her glass, and Penelope kept drinking, her words growing looser and less guarded as the night wore on. Sam matched her drink for drink at first, but she noticed that after his second whiskey, he began nursing the same glass, barely touching it while she continued to pour alcohol down her throat like it was water. You drink a lot, Sam observed, and there was no judgment in his tone, just quiet concern. Penelope laughed, and it came out bitter. Only every day makes everything easier. Does it really? The question hung in the air between them, and Penelope found she could not answer it. She wanted to say yes, wanted to defend the choice she made every morning when she reached for the bottle, but looking into Sam's steady gray eyes, she found the lie would not come. Instead, tears pricked at her eyes and she blinked them away furiously, angry at herself for showing weakness to a stranger. I should go, she said, pushing away from the bar. The room tilted slightly, and she grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. Sam was there immediately, his hand gentle on her elbow. Let me walk you home. It is late. I can manage, Penelope protested, but even as she said it, she stumbled, and Sam's arm came around her waist, supporting her weight easily. I am sure you can, but humor me anyway. She was too tired and too drunk to argue further, so she let him guide her out of the saloon and into the cool night air. The stars were brilliant overhead, scattered across the black sky like diamonds, and the desert wind carried the scent of sage and dust. Penelope breathed deeply, trying to clear her head, but the world still felt soft around the edges, reality blurred by alcohol. Where do you live? Sam asked, and Penelope pointed down the street toward a small boarding house at the edge of town. They walked slowly, Sam matching his pace to hers, his arm still around her waist. Penelope was acutely aware of the warmth of his body, the solid strength of him, and something twisted in her chest. When was the last time someone had touched her with kindness instead of lust? When was the last time someone had looked at her like she was worth something beyond a night's entertainment? When they reached the boarding house, Penelope fumbled with the door latch, her fingers clumsy. Sam reached around her and opened it easily, then helped her inside and up the narrow stairs to her room. The space was small and spare, just a bed and a washstand and a trunk for her belongings, but it was hers, and she had kept it clean even when everything else in her life had fallen into chaos. Sam helped her sit on the edge of the bed, then knelt down to remove her boots. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Penelope felt tears threatening again. "You do not have to do that." "I know," Sam said simply, setting her boots aside. He stood and looked down at her, his expression serious. "Miss Parker, can I ask you something?" "Penelope. Call me Penelope." She looked up at him, vision slightly blurred. "And you can ask me anything, Cowboy. I might even answer. Why do you drink so much?" The question was direct, without malice or mockery, and Penelope found herself answering honestly. "Because when I am sober, everything hurts. When I am drunk, I do not have to feel any of it." Sam was quiet for a moment, then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch feather light. "What if feeling was not so bad? What if you had something worth feeling for?" "Like what?" Penelope whispered. "I do not know yet. But I would like to find out if you would let me." Penelope stared at him, her heart pounding. No man had ever spoken to her like this, with such gentle sincerity. Most men wanted her body or her company for a night, but Sam was looking at her like she was a person, like her pain mattered, like she mattered. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "I have to deliver my cattle tomorrow," Sam continued, "but I will be back in town in the evening. Would you have dinner with me? Somewhere other than the saloon?" "Why would you want that?" Penelope asked, genuinely confused. "You could have any girl in town." Sam smiled, and it reached his eyes. "I do not want any girl. I want to know you, Penelope Parker. The real you, not the one hiding behind whiskey." Something cracked open inside her chest, a fragile, dangerous thing that felt like hope. "I do not know if I remember how to be that person. Then maybe we can figure it out together." Penelope wanted to say yes, wanted to grab onto this lifeline he was offering, but fear held her back. What if she could not do it? What if without the alcohol she was just empty, broken beyond repair? What if she disappointed him, disappointed herself? Sam seemed to sense her hesitation because he squeezed her hand gently. "Just think about it. I will come by tomorrow evening around 6. If you want to have dinner, I will be here. If not, I will understand." He left then, closing the door quietly behind him, and Penelope sat alone in her room, staring at the wall. Her head was spinning from drink and emotion, and she felt more awake than she had in months. She lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, and closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Instead, she kept replaying the conversation, kept feeling the gentle pressure of Sam's hand in hers, kept hearing his voice asking her what if feeling was not so bad. The next morning arrived with brutal clarity, sunlight streaming through her window and a pounding headache that made her groan. Penelope rolled over and immediately saw the glass of water on her nightstand that she did not remember pouring, and beside it, a folded piece of paper. She reached for it with shaking hands and unfolded it to find a note in neat handwriting. "Miss Parker, I hope you are feeling all right this morning. Please drink the water. I meant what I said about dinner. 6 o'clock. Yours, Sam Morrison." Penelope pressed the note to her chest and felt tears sting her eyes. She could not remember the last time someone had cared enough to leave her water, to check on her, to see her as more than just the drunk girl at the bar. The shame of how she had spent the last 3 years hit her with fresh force, and she curled into herself, wanting desperately to reach for the bottle she kept hidden under her bed. But she did not. Instead, she forced herself to get up, to drink the water, to wash her face in the basin. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the washstand and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she gotten so thin? When had those dark circles appeared under her eyes? When had she stopped caring about anything beyond the next drink? The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Penelope went to work at the saloon, but for the first time in years, she did not pour herself a drink the moment she arrived. Her hands shook as she served customers, her body crying out for the familiar comfort of alcohol, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through. The other girls noticed and whispered among themselves, and the bartender raised an eyebrow but said nothing. By afternoon, Penelope felt like she was crawling out of her skin. Everything was too bright, too loud, too much. She could hear every conversation, feel every emotion she had been suppressing, and it was overwhelming. She made it through her shift by sheer force of will, her thoughts fixed on the promise of dinner, on the memory of Sam's kind eyes and gentle touch. When 6 o'clock approached, Penelope raced back to the boarding house and changed into her best dress, a simple green cotton that brought out her eyes. She brushed her hair until it shone and pinched her cheeks to bring color to her pale face. Her hands were still shaking, and she felt sick with nerves and withdrawal, but she was determined. Sam arrived exactly at 6, dressed in clean clothes with his hair combed back and his face freshly shaved. He held a small bunch of wildflowers, yellow and purple blooms that must have grown somewhere in the desert, and when he saw her, his whole face lit up. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her the flowers. Penelope took them with trembling hands, bringing them to her nose to hide the tears that threatened. "Thank you. Nobody has given me flowers before." Sam's expression softened. "Then we need to change that." He took her to a small restaurant on the other side of town, away from the saloons and gambling halls, a quiet place where families ate and the food was simple but good. Penelope felt out of place at first, too aware of the respectable couples around them, certain they could all see what she was. But Sam kept up a steady stream of conversation that helped ground her. They ordered steak and potatoes, and when the food arrived, Penelope realized she could barely remember the last time she had eaten a proper meal. She had been surviving on whiskey and whatever scraps she could stomach, and the rich food sat heavy in her stomach. But it was good, so good, and she ate slowly, savoring every bite. Sam told her more about his ranch, painting pictures with words of wide open spaces and honest work, and Penelope found herself leaning forward, hungry for his stories. He spoke about his plans to expand, to breed better cattle, to build a life that meant something. And then he asked her about her dreams, the ones she had given up, and Penelope found herself talking about the ranch she had loved as a child, about the horses she had raised, about the life she had imagined before it had all fallen apart. "What if you could have that again?" Sam asked quietly. "What if you could start over?" Penelope shook her head. "It is too late. I have nothing, no money, no land, no prospects, and I am—" She trailed off, unable to say the words. "You are what?" Sam prompted gently. "Broken," Penelope whispered. "I am broken, Sam. You do not want someone like me." Sam reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. "I see a woman who has survived things that would have destroyed most people. I see someone who is strong enough to get up every day even when everything hurts. I see someone who deserves a second chance." "I have not had a drink all day," Penelope blurted out, and then immediately wished she had kept quiet. But Sam's face broke into a smile. "I know, I can tell." "How? Your eyes are clearer. Your hands shake, but you are present in a way you were not last night. You are here with me, really here, and it is the most beautiful thing I have seen in a long time." Penelope felt something crack inside her chest, that fragile hope growing stronger. "It is so hard. Everything is so loud and bright, and I feel like I might fly apart." "I imagine it is," Sam said seriously. "But you are doing it anyway. That takes courage. They finished dinner and walked slowly through town, Sam pointing out the stars and telling her their names, and Penelope listened, committing every word to memory. When they reached her boarding house, she found herself reluctant to say goodbye, afraid that once he left, the reality of her situation would come crashing back, and she would reach for the bottle again. Sam seemed to sense her fear because he did not immediately leave. Instead, he sat with her on the steps of the boarding house, their shoulders touching, and they talked until the moon rose high overhead. He told her about losing his parents to fever when he was 20, about the grief that had nearly swallowed him whole, about how he had channeled it into building his ranch into something his father would have been proud of. "So you understand," Penelope said softly. "I understand," Sam confirmed. "Pain does not just disappear because we want it to. It stays with us, becomes part of us. But we get to choose what we do with it. We can let it destroy us, or we can use it to become stronger, more compassionate, more alive." "I am scared," Penelope admitted. "I am scared that without the whiskey there is nothing left of me." Sam turned to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "Then let me show you differently. Let me show you who you really are." Penelope leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "What if I fail? What if I cannot do it? Then we try again, and again, as many times as it takes." "Why?" Penelope opened her eyes and looked at him, needing to understand. "Why do you care so much about someone you just met?" Sam was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes searching her face. "Because when I walked into that saloon last night and saw you standing there, it was like looking into a mirror. I saw someone who was hurting, someone who was drowning, and I thought if I could help, if I could reach out and maybe pull you back from the edge, then maybe all the pain I went through would mean something. Maybe I could take something broken and help make it whole." "And what if I want to kiss you?" Penelope whispered, her heart racing. "Right now, completely sober, what if I want that?" Sam's breath caught, and his thumb traced the line of her jaw with infinite gentleness. "Then I would say we should probably wait until you are certain. Until you have been sober more than one day. Until you know for sure that what you are feeling is real and not just gratitude or fear or the need to feel anything beyond pain." Penelope wanted to protest, wanted to close the distance between them and press her lips to his, but she knew he was right. Every kiss she had experienced before had been clouded by alcohol, impulsive and forgettable. If she was going to do this, if she was going to kiss this man who had somehow seen through all her walls to the frightened woman beneath, she wanted it to be perfect. She wanted it to be real. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. "Every day," Sam promised. "For as long as you will have me." True to his word, Sam appeared the next evening and the evening after that and the one after that. He stayed in Owyhee, claiming he had business to attend to, but Penelope suspected he was staying for her, and the thought made her chest tight with emotion. They fell into a routine, meeting each evening for dinner or walks through town, and every night Sam made sure she got home safely, never pushing, never demanding more than she was ready to give. The days were hard, harder than anything Penelope had ever done. Her body screamed for alcohol. Her mind conjured up 1,000 justifications for just one drink, just a little something to take the edge off, but she held firm. She quit her job at the saloon, unable to be surrounded by temptation, and took work instead at the general store, stocking shelves and helping customers. The pay was less, but the owner, a kind older woman named Mrs. Chen, seemed to understand what Penelope was trying to do and offered her encouragement. Sam was there through all of it, steady and patient. When Penelope had a bad day and showed up with red eyes from crying, he held her and let her talk through the pain. When she had a good day and wanted to share her small victories, he celebrated with her like she had moved mountains. He brought her books to read and taught her to play chess on the porch of the boarding house. And slowly, day by day, Penelope began to remember who she had been before the whiskey had taken over. 2 weeks passed, then 3, then a month. The shaking in Penelope's hands subsided, and the color returned to her face. She gained weight, her body filling out in a healthy way, and the dark circles under her eyes faded. She started to recognize herself again when she looked in the mirror, and more importantly, she started to like what she saw. Sam's original plan to return to his ranch had been delayed indefinitely, and Penelope knew she should feel guilty about that, but she could not bring herself to regret it. She had fallen in love with him, slowly and completely, and the realization both thrilled and terrified her. She loved the way he laughed, head thrown back with genuine joy. She loved how he treated everyone with respect, from the hotel clerk to the stable boy. She loved his hands, strong and capable, and the way they touched her with such careful tenderness, as if she were something precious. One evening in late April, after they had been seeing each other for nearly 2 months, Sam arrived to find Penelope waiting on the boarding house steps, wearing her green dress and a nervous smile. "I have been sober for 53 days, she announced as he approached. Sam's face split into a grin and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around. "Penelope, that is incredible. I am so proud of you." When he set her down, Penelope kept her hands on his shoulders, looking up into his eyes. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" "I am in love with you," Penelope said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I did not think I was capable of feeling like this, did not think I deserved it, but I do. I love you, Samuel Morrison, and I wanted to tell you while I was completely sober so you would know it was real." Sam's eyes shone with emotion, and he cupped her face in both hands. "I love you too, Penelope Parker. I have loved you since that first night when you were too stubborn to admit you needed help. I have loved you through every hard day and every small victory. You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met." "Kiss me," Penelope whispered. "Please, Sam. I have never been kissed sober before. I want my first real kiss to be with you." Sam smiled, and it was tender and full of promise. "Then we had better make it perfect." He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Penelope had never been more certain of anything in her life. When his lips touched hers, it was gentle and sweet, a soft press that sent sparks racing through her entire body. This was nothing like the drunken kisses she barely remembered, nothing like the fumbling encounters that had left her feeling empty. This was everything her mother had told her about, everything she had stopped believing in. Sam's arms came around her waist, pulling her closer, and Penelope melted into him, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair. The kiss deepened, still gentle but with an underlying passion that made her knees weak. She could taste mint on his lips and feel the steady beat of his heart against her chest, and every sensation was sharp and clear and absolutely perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Penelope was crying, but they were happy tears, the kind that came from feeling too much joy to contain. "That was perfect," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That was exactly perfect." Sam rested his forehead against hers, his thumb wiping away her tears. "The first of many, I hope." "Yes," Penelope breathed. "Yes, please." They stood there wrapped in each other's arms as the sun set over Owyhee, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold, and Penelope felt something she had not experienced in years. She felt whole. Not healed, not completely, because she knew the work of staying sober would be a daily choice for the rest of her life, but whole enough to imagine a future, whole enough to believe in happiness again. Over the next few weeks, Sam began talking seriously about returning to his ranch. and Penelope felt panic rise in her throat at the thought of losing him. But before she could voice her fears, Sam took her hands and asked her to come with him, not just to visit but to stay, to build a life there together. "I know we have not known each other long," Sam said, his gray eyes earnest, "but I have never been more certain of anything. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to teach you to ride again, to help you start breeding horses like you used to dream about. I want to build something with you, something that is ours." "Are you asking me to marry you?" Penelope asked, her heart pounding. "I am asking if you would consider it. We can take as much time as you need, but I want you to know my intentions are serious. I want forever with you, Penelope." Penelope thought about the woman she had been 2 months ago, drunk and hopeless and convinced she had nothing to live for. She thought about the woman she was now, still fragile in some ways but growing stronger every day, learning to face life without the buffer of alcohol, learning to feel again. And she thought about the man standing before her, the one who had seen her at her worst and chosen to stay, the one who had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it. Yes to the ranch and the horses and the future. Yes to you, Sam. Always yes to you." Sam let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around just like he had before, and when he set her down, he kissed her again. And this time it was celebration and promise and love all rolled into one perfect moment. They were married a month later in a small ceremony at the local church, with Mrs. Chen and a few of Sam's ranch hands as witnesses. Penelope wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her make, with wildflowers in her hair, and when she walked down the aisle toward Sam, she did not feel like damaged goods or a drunk or any of the horrible things she had called herself. She felt like a bride, like someone deserving of love and happiness, like someone starting fresh. The journey to Sam's ranch took 2 days by wagon, and Penelope spent the entire time staring out at the landscape, marveling at how beautiful everything was when you were seeing it through clear eyes. The desert stretched out in all directions, vast and open, dotted with sage and the occasional Joshua tree. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still capped with snow, and the sky was so blue it almost hurt to look at. When they finally arrived at the ranch, Penelope felt tears spring to her eyes. It was everything Sam had described and more, a sprawling property with good grazing land and a small creek running through it. The house was modest but well built, with a wide porch and windows that let in lots of light. There was a barn and a corral, and in the distance, she could see cattle grazing peacefully. "Welcome home," Sam said, helping her down from the wagon. "Home." The word settled over Penelope like a warm blanket, and she realized it was true. This was home, not because of the place but because of the man beside her, because of the life they were going to build together. The first few months of marriage were an adjustment. Penelope had to learn the rhythms of ranch life, had to figure out how to cook for two and manage a household. There were hard days when the temptation to drink came back strong, usually when she was overwhelmed or scared. But Sam was always there, patient and supportive, reminding her of how far she had come. And there were good days, so many good days. Days when Penelope worked alongside Sam in the corral, learning to train horses again, feeling the satisfaction of connecting with an animal. Days when they rode out to check on the cattle and stopped to have a picnic by the creek, lying in the grass and watching clouds drift by. Days when they stayed in bed late, wrapped in each other's arms, talking and laughing and making love with a tenderness that still made Penelope's breath catch. Sam never treated her like she was fragile or broken. He pushed her when she needed pushing, supported her when she needed support, and loved her through all of it with a steadiness that made her feel safe. and Penelope bloomed under his care, becoming more confident, more herself, the woman she had been meant to be before grief had derailed her life. By the end of their first year together, Penelope had started a small horse breeding operation, using the money she had carefully saved from her job at the general store, and some that Sam had contributed. She focused on working horses, the kind that could handle the rough terrain and hard work of ranch life, and word quickly spread that Penelope Morrison raised quality animals. It gave her a sense of purpose beyond just being Sam's wife, made her feel like she was contributing something valuable. Their second year brought unexpected news. Penelope realized she was pregnant in early spring, and the discovery filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had never imagined herself as a mother, had not thought she was capable of being responsible for another life when she had barely been able to take care of herself. But Sam was thrilled, and his excitement was contagious. "You are going to be an amazing mother," he assured her, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "Look at how much you have overcome. Look at how strong you are. Our child is lucky to have you." The pregnancy was not easy. Penelope battled morning sickness and exhaustion, and there were moments when her body craved alcohol with an intensity that scared her. But she held firm, thinking about the life growing inside her, about the future she wanted to give this child. She attended regular checkups with the doctor in town, ate well, and rested when Sam insisted, even though she chafed at being inactive. In November of 1880, Penelope gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Parker Morrison, after Penelope's father, and the moment the doctor placed him in her arms, Penelope understood love in a way she never had before. This tiny, perfect human was depending on her, trusting her completely, and she vowed with every fiber of her being that she would never let him down. Motherhood transformed Penelope in ways she had not anticipated. The sleepless nights and constant demands were exhausting, but they also kept her grounded in the present, too busy caring for Thomas to dwell on the past. Watching him grow, seeing his first smile and hearing his first laugh, filled her with a joy so pure it almost hurt. And seeing Sam with their son, so gentle and patient, made her fall in love with him all over again. They had a second child 3 years later, a daughter they named Clara Rose, and their family felt complete. The ranch prospered, growing steadily over the years as Sam's reputation for quality cattle spread, and Penelope's horses became sought after throughout the territory. They hired more hands, built a bigger barn, and added on to the house to accommodate their growing family. But more than the material success, what mattered most was the life they had built together. Penelope marked her sobriety in years now, and each anniversary felt like a victory. She still had hard days, still felt the pull of old habits when stress mounted, but she had learned better ways to cope. She talked to Sam, rode out into the hills to clear her head, or focused on her children and the horses, grounding herself in the present rather than drowning in the past. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved working alongside his father, and Clara was spirited and curious, constantly asking questions about everything. Penelope taught them both to ride almost as soon as they could walk, and she loved watching them tear across the property on their ponies, their laughter carried on the wind. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, Penelope and Sam would sit on the porch and watch the stars, just like they had in the early days of their courtship. Sam's arm would be around her shoulders, and Penelope would lean into his warmth, feeling grateful for every single day they had together. "You ever regret it?" Sam asked one night, years into their marriage. "Giving up the whiskey, leaving Owyhee, building this life?" Penelope thought about the question seriously, considering all the hard work and struggle it had taken to get here, all the moments when staying sober had felt impossible. Then she thought about her husband, her children, the horses in the barn, and the life they had created together. "Not even for a second," she said honestly. "You saved my life, Sam. You saw something in me worth saving when I could not see it myself, and you gave me a reason to fight. Everything good in my life now exists because you walked into that saloon and decided I was worth the trouble." Sam pressed a kiss to her temple. "You were always worth it. You just needed someone to remind you." "I love you," Penelope said, the words still as true and powerful as they had been that first time she had said them, standing on the steps of the boarding house in Owyhee. "I love you too," Sam replied. "Forever and always." As the years continued to pass, Penelope sometimes thought back to that girl she had been, lost and drowning in a dusty Nevada saloon, convinced that happiness was something that happened to other people. She thought about the shame and the pain and the emptiness that had driven her to the bottle night after night, seeking oblivion because she could not face reality. And then she looked at the life she had now, at the strong, capable woman she had become, at the family she had built and the dreams she had reclaimed, and she marveled at how much could change when you found the courage to try. It had not been easy, and there had been moments when failure seemed certain, but she had kept going, kept choosing sobriety and health and life one day at a time. The kiss that Sam had given her that night in Owyhee had been perfect, just as he had promised, but it was only the first of thousands. Every morning when they woke up together, every evening when he came in from the fields, every celebration and quiet moment in between, Sam kissed her like she was precious, like she was loved, like she was everything he needed. And in those kisses, Penelope found everything she had been searching for in the bottom of a glass. She found connection and passion and comfort. She found herself reflected back through someone else's eyes, not as broken or damaged, but as strong and beautiful and worthy of love. She found redemption, not from her past, but from the person she had become despite it. By the time Thomas was grown and ready to take over more responsibility on the ranch, and Clara had become a skilled horse trainer in her own right, Penelope could look back on her life with pride instead of shame. She had survived the worst that life could throw at her, and had come out the other side not just intact, but thriving. She had built something meaningful, raised good children, maintained her sobriety through countless challenges, and loved a man who had never given up on her, even when she had given up on herself. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Sam took Penelope back to Owyhee. The town had changed over the years, some buildings gone and new ones built, but the Silver Spur Saloon was still there, its doors swinging in the desert wind. They stood outside it, hand in hand, and Penelope felt a rush of memories, both painful and precious. "You want to go in?" Sam asked. Penelope considered it, then shook her head. "No, that is not who I am anymore. I would rather remember the night I walked out of there with you, the night my real life began." Sam smiled and pulled her close, kissing her right there on the dusty street. "Then let us go home. Home." The word still filled Penelope with warmth, even after all these years. Home to the ranch they had built together, to the children who had grown into fine adults, to the life that was wholly and completely theirs. Home to the place where she was safe, where she was loved, where she could be fully herself without fear or shame. As they rode back toward the ranch, the setting sun painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Penelope thought about that first real kiss, the one that had changed everything. Sam had promised to make it perfect, and he had kept his word. But more than that, he had made her life perfect, not in the sense of being without struggle or hardship, but in the sense of being full, meaningful, and worth living. She had never been kissed sober before that night in Owyhee, had never allowed herself to be truly present for any intimate moment, too afraid of feeling too much, of being hurt again. But Sam had shown her that feeling was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced, that the risk of pain was worth it for the possibility of love. Years later, when Penelope was an old woman with silver in her hair and grandchildren playing in the yard of the ranch, she would still remember that kiss with perfect clarity. She would remember the way Sam's hands had cupped her face, the gentleness in his eyes, the taste of mint on his lips. She would remember feeling alive and present and hopeful for the first time in years, feeling like the world was full of possibilities instead of just pain. And she would know, with absolute certainty, that choosing to stay sober that day, choosing to take Sam's hand and trust him, choosing to believe that she deserved happiness, had been the best decision of her entire life. That one perfect kiss had been the beginning of everything, the first step on a journey that had led her to a life beyond anything she had dared to dream. Sam kept his promises, all of them. He stayed by her side through easy times and hard ones, through the daily struggles of ranch life and the deeper challenges of maintaining sobriety. He loved her fiercely and faithfully, never wavering, never doubting. He gave her children and a home and a purpose, but most importantly, he gave her back herself. And Penelope, in turn, gave him everything she had. She worked alongside him to build their ranch into something prosperous and sustainable. She raised their children with love and wisdom, teaching them the value of hard work and the importance of compassion. She maintained her sobriety through sheer determination and the support of the man who believed in her, proving to herself and everyone else that redemption was possible. Their love story became something of a legend in the county, the tale of the drunk girl from the saloon who had been saved by a cowboy's faith in her, who had transformed herself into a respected rancher and mother. But those who knew them best understood it was not quite that simple. Sam had not saved Penelope. He had simply shown her she was worth saving and then given her the support and space to save herself. On quiet evenings in their old age, long after the children had grown and started families of their own, Sam and Penelope would still sit on the porch and watch the stars. His hand would find hers automatically, their fingers interlacing with the ease of decades of practice, and they would sit in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. Sometimes Penelope would think about that girl she had been, desperate and hopeless, convinced she had nothing to offer the world. And she would send a silent thank you to Sam for seeing past the whiskey and the pain to the woman underneath, for being patient enough to wait for her to find herself, for loving her into wholeness. "What are you thinking about?" Sam would ask, even though he probably knew. "You," Penelope would reply, squeezing his hand. "Us, how lucky I am." "We are both lucky," Sam would correct, because even after all these years, he never let her minimize her own worth. "You did the hard work, Penelope. You chose to change your life. I just got to be there to watch you become who you were always meant to be." And Penelope would lean her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, horse and leather and the sage-scented wind, and know that he was right. She had done the hard work, had fought every single day to stay sober, to be present, to build a life worth living. But having Sam beside her, believing in her, loving her unconditionally, had made all the difference. Their story was not a fairy tale with a magic cure. Penelope never stopped being an alcoholic. She just became a sober one, and that sobriety required constant vigilance and choice. But it was a love story, pure and simple, about two people who found each other at the right time and built something beautiful together. The ranch would eventually pass to Thomas, who ran it with the same dedication his father had, and Clara would establish her own breeding program that gained recognition throughout the West. Penelope and Sam's grandchildren and great-grandchildren would grow up hearing stories about the grandmother who had overcome impossible odds, who had pulled herself back from the brink through sheer determination and the love of a good man. But the story they loved most was the simplest one, the tale of a first kiss that changed everything. How their grandfather had promised to make it perfect, how their grandmother had been brave enough to let herself feel, how that one moment of connection had been the beginning of a love that lasted a lifetime. When Penelope finally passed away at the age of 78, surrounded by her family in the home she and Sam had built together, her last words were for her husband. "Thank you," she whispered, her hand in his, "for that perfect kiss, for all the perfect kisses, for giving me a reason to stay." Sam held her hand long after she was gone, tears streaming down his weathered face, and he whispered back, "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for every single day." He followed her not long after, his heart unable to keep beating without hers, and they were buried together on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the wide Nevada sky they had both loved so much. Their headstone was simple, just their names and dates, but underneath was carved a single line that told the whole story. "She taught me courage. He taught me love." The ranch continued, generation after generation, a living testament to what two people could build when they chose to believe in each other, when they chose to fight for something better, when they chose love over fear. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right across the desert, carrying the scent of sage and possibility, those who listened carefully could almost hear an echo of laughter, the sound of a woman and a man who had found their way home to each other against all odds. Penelope Parker had never been kissed sober before that spring evening in Owyhee, Nevada, but Samuel Morrison had made sure her first real kiss was perfect. And in doing so, he had given her something far more precious than a moment of romance. He had given her a future, a reason to hope, and a love that would endure long after both of them had turned to dust beneath the desert stars. Their story was proof that it was never too late to change, never too late to choose a different path, never too late to become who you were meant to be. All it took was courage, support, and someone who believed in you enough to help you believe in yourself. And maybe, just maybe, one perfect kiss that reminded you what it felt like to be truly alive.